Cheers. Welcome to Hopefully Here Reading. I am Hope, and I am so glad to be here because it has been a moment. I went into June, I think I did a June TBR, and I had plans for that month, and things fell apart because life sometimes throws things at you that you do not see coming, and I'm kind of only just finally starting to feel well enough to be able to do this, but I'm really excited. I have been watching everybody's mid-year book freakout tags. I really enjoy that tag. My TBR grows exponentially when I watch that because suddenly there are a gazillion books I hadn't heard of that I must read immediately that I learn of through these tags. And I know it's a couple weeks later than is actually mid-year, but I wanted to do it anyways. Here we go. I suppose, should I start off with the obligatory, the year is going so fast, I can't believe we're more than halfway through already, except parts of this year have crawled like a mofo, so I'm not necessarily in that camp of thinking, but we are here and I'm so excited. I've got my coffee, I've got a pile of books, I've got some questions, and we are going to get into it. Shall we take a pause? Yes, we shall. I guess another caveat of this is there seem to be a few different versions of this tag going around. I think the original creator is no longer on YouTube, so I have taken some different questions from different creators and kind of mashed them together into what it is that is relevant to me and what I feel like talking about. So there we go. I will write the questions in the description box below if you want to see exactly what it is that I'm following, and if you are up to it or want to, please feel free to answer the questions. If you have done your own tag, leave a link so people can find it. But now, let's get into it. First question is, how has your reading year been so far? My reading year started off well, got really slumpy, and then has picked up in the last little bit. I haven't come across an all-time favorite book of my life yet this year, but I have in the last few weeks, months, read some very good books that I'm super excited about, and I think overall, I would say it's been a pretty decent year. I have read, let me grab my phone. I was gonna say, how many books have I read? Let's find out. What are people using to track their reading? Are you Storygraph? Are you Goodreads? I feel like I've heard of a couple other ones, but I'm not really sure what they are called. Is Fable one or something like that? Fable keeps coming up, I feel like, on other people's videos, but I've never looked into it. I don't actually know what it is. But for 2025, now, bear in mind, I'm filming this a little bit into July, so this isn't necessarily most accurate, but as of today, I have read 101 books, and I have read just over 35,000 pages, which I would say is pretty decent. I can't imagine, I've never gotten over 200 books in a year. My reading tends to slow down kind of latter end of the year. I would expect it would probably do the same. I generally read, I think, between 160 and 180 books a year. That's kind of where I expect to end up at the end of December. Let's get into the actual books. So, best book of the year. I have read some very good books, but a lot of them can be put as answers to other questions, and I'm trying not to do repeats. So the book I'm going to talk about for best book of the year is one that I have an entire video on, so I won't go too far into it, but it is King of Ashes by Isaac Cosby. I just adore this man's writing. His storytelling is top-notch, and I had such a good time reading this book. I was very fortunate that I got an advanced reader copy of it, and so was able to read it a couple of weeks before it was released. But you're following a family, you're following two brothers and a sister, and the oldest brother, Roman, has come back home because his father is in a coma because he has been hit by a train, and there are some kind of suspicious circumstances surrounding that, and when he gets home, he realizes from his younger brother, or discovers why it is that maybe things are not exactly what they seem. And then to top it off, this family owns a crematorium. A Southern Gothic Godfather retelling is kind of the blurb that was being used to market this book, and while I have never seen The Godfather, that's basically the vibes I got. I had such a good time with this book. I've heard nothing but good things about it, and I think if you enjoy a darker, grittier story, a little bit of a mystery thriller, this is definitely your guy. The next question is, worst book of the year. Here's the thing. I DNF like it's nobody's business. I have no problem DNFing a book. Sometimes it takes 2 pages, sometimes it takes half the book. And so I typically don't read a lot of things that I super dislike, but I have discovered a pet peeve. And it's a book, I don't even remember what it's called. I don't want to call it out, but there's a book, it's a romance, which, let's be honest, right off the bat, puts it on a back foot because I'm not the biggest contemporary romance fan. But if I'm going to read contemporary romance, I like sports romances. My number one watching on television is some sort of sport. I watch most, and except for basketball, haven't gone into basketball, but I just enjoy watching sports. And so there's something about sports romance that I am more inclined to head towards. And there is a new one out, F1. It's a female race engineer and a male racer. And on the blurb of the book, it talks about how, I swear it says she's like the best female engineer, race engineer on the grid or something. But there is nothing in the book that leads me to believe that that statement is fact. And I've noticed that in a couple of things, and that you can't tell me something on the blurb, but then show absolutely no backing up of that point in the book. Like, you can't just tell me somebody's the best at something, but then not prove to me in their actions that they're the best at something, and for me to just be like, oh, but they're the best, so it's totally fine. It doesn't work that way for me. And so while I don't have a worst book of the year, I have a pet peeve of the year, and it is that it is misleading or like false leading blurbs. You need to back up your actions and your thoughts with truth, and for me, that is a pet peeve. And it was that one book that really got my gears grinding about it. I can't stand it. So that is that. We're gonna move on. But if you want to change this question from worst book to biggest pet peeve in a book, I give you permission to do so. Next, we have best sequel of the year. Here's the thing. My best sequels all could have been best books of the year. I absolutely adore these books. I gave King of Ashes best book of the year because it is not a sequel, but these ones are absolutely entirely aligned, and it is a 3-way tie. First off, as with most of the world, Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. This book is a masterpiece in how to do a prequel when we already know the information, storytelling, the character building, everything about it I absolutely adored. And if you haven't read The Hunger Games, I think you might be living under a rock, but so freaking good. Next up, a book that I have gone on and on and on about, The Dark Mirror by Samantha Shannon. This is one of my favorite series of all time. We're 5 books in now. I just freaking adore the storytelling. I enjoy the characters a lot. I enjoy the political intrigue. There's nothing about this book that I do not like, and I'm so looking forward to rereading this because it is going to be a reread hopefully at some point this year, but having the story continue because it's developed in a way that just continues to keep me intrigued. I'm very, very happy to have read that. And then finally, Valor, the sequel to Malice by John Gwynne. This series on its own, I have absolutely enjoyed. I've read the whole series this year. I didn't purposely read it at the same time. I think Becca and the books and a couple of people are doing like a read along of this series, and they just happen to have aligned at the same time that I've been reading it. So that's been kind of a nice little bonus to reading this book, is kind of seeing where other people are in the series, and it's definitely a well-loved series. I absolutely love this, and those 3 are very, very high on the best books of my year. But like I said, because they're sequels, I put them here to answer this question. What is a new release that I still need to get to? And that for me, number 1 is Friedrich Bachmann's My Friends. I have just absolutely fallen in love with Friedrich Bachmann's writing again this year. Every time I read his stuff, I remember how good he is at storytelling. And I think to me, I think I've said storytelling a lot in this tag. I've discovered that that's just a really important component of my books. I need to have plot, but it needs to be well written. I know that's probably pretty obvious, but I believe that I think there are some people that can kind of gloss over bad writing or inconsistencies and stuff, and I don't think I can do that in my reading. And Friedrich Bachmann just writes a flawless story, and so My Friends by him is definitely the one I'm most looking forward to reading, and it is on my library holds. It's coming to me, just coming to me slowly. What is my most anticipated release for the second half of this year? And that is, again, probably a pretty popular answer, The Strength of the Few by James Islington. There is The Will of the Many right there. So freaking looking forward to the sequel, to the follow-up to this book. I am not looking forward to what the cover looks like, but that's a tangent for a different day. But yes, absolutely cannot wait for this to come out. I believe it comes out at the beginning of November. What is my biggest disappointment of the year? This one was kind of hard because there were a few that I was really, really excited about, and then they didn't exactly meet expectations. But I think for me, the one that I was most kind of bummed about was Watermoon by Samantha, who wrote that? Samantha Soto Yambao, I believe is who wrote this book. And here's the thing. I didn't totally dislike this book, but I didn't love the way the story was told. The redeeming factor is that her world building is absolutely phenomenal. I think the creativity and the imagination behind the places that she created, like up in the clouds and with the people fishing with the she's phenomenal at building a world. But I think the story that was put into the world was really kind of lackluster. And that's why to me it was a bigger disappointment. I think there was a lot of hype about this book going into it, and my expectations were probably a little bit higher than it needed to be. That being said, she is coming out with another book that I'm going to pick up because her world building is so incredible that I'm definitely going to give her another shot. For me, what the world brought and what the story brought didn't really match up very well. What was the biggest surprise of the year? And that for me was The Sweetness of Water by Nathan Harris. I picked this up to fulfill a book bingo prompt from the Seattle Public Library, and it's historical fiction. And historical fiction I have had a love-hate relationship with, not really love-hate relationship, but a love-forget relationship with. And reading this book and the way that he writes these characters and how you can just evoke such emotion and the things you can feel from something being written on paper, I thought Nathan Harris did absolutely brilliantly. You're following two brothers who have been freed from slavery, but obviously just because you're freed from slavery doesn't mean there aren't still a lot of problems that you're gonna have to push through. And there's a man who owns land and he wants to start, what is it that he wants to grow? He wants to grow something, and he asks these two men to help him, and at first they're resistant to the idea because they don't want to be working for anybody anymore. But then they realize they need means in order to leave, and there's a lot of repercussions from this town for hiring these two black men and paying them a decent wage and giving them a place to live, and it's heartbreaking and incredible all at the same time. So good, and I was blown away by how much I absolutely adore this book, so much so that I actually got an advanced reader copy of his next book, Amity, and I'm very, very looking forward to reading it. I don't know what number it is, but the next question is new favorite author. I think the only one that even applies for this in terms of my reading is John Glynn. I've read 4 of his books this year, loved every single one of them, hope to read more from him. I don't know if I'll get to it this year, but he's the only one that I've read enough of to know that he's probably one, could be a favorite. I want to read another series by him to kind of solidify that, but nobody else have I read that is new to me or debut to me that I feel really, really compelled, except for John Gwynne, and I'm okay with it. Who is a new favorite character? And for me, that has to be Lambert Simnel from The Pretenders by Joe Harkins. I loved this book. This book also could have been in a favorite book of the year, one of the top favorite book of the year, but I'm going to put it here. The character Lambert Simnel is a boy who finds out that he is the bastard child of a king, and people want to rally around him to make him king, and the stories and the things that he gets thrust into, having no idea what this world even is because he was just brought up by like the town's blacksmith. Like, it's crazy the things that he has to go through, and he doesn't even really understand what's happening. I think the writing for this character was so good. I don't always love stories being told from younger people, but the way Joe Harkins wrote this character and created his voice, he was so amusing. I had such a good time reading this book. And so for me, just the way he sees the world and the way he has to trudge through the world, was top notch. I absolutely loved it. He's definitely one of the most memorable characters I've read this year. The book that made you cry. I have not cried in a book this year, but that does not mean my heartstrings were not tugged. And if I could count books that I was reading right now, Beartown and Us Against the second book in that series would be on this list, because holy pants, like I said, Friedrich Bachmann knows how to get a reaction out of his readers. But in terms of a book that I actually read, that would be The Story of a Heart by Dr. Rachel Clark, which follows the story of a girl and a boy. The girl dies and is giving her heart to a boy, and it's the story of kind of the history of heart transplant and how it works and the logistics behind it. And then these two families, obviously it's a devastating story for both families, but maybe one more so than the other, because it means somebody has in fact passed away. And I just find the dichotomy of knowing that somebody you love is going to get a transplant that could save their life, but knowing at the exact same time a family is falling apart because somebody they love is the way this book was written, like, gets you in the first 5 pages. It was done so very well, and that for me is the definite one that most likely to have made me cry. Didn't shed a tear, but like I said, I don't shed tears very often in books. That one, heartbreaker. So let's switch to a book that made you happy, and that has got to be Assassins Anonymous by Rob Hart. This is a thriller about a man who was an assassin and wants to leave, and so he has to go to Assassins Anonymous, but the world isn't necessarily letting him leave it behind, and how he is trying to maintain the rules of Assassins Anonymous while being kind of chased around the world. People want him dead, and how can he get away with not killing somebody because he doesn't want to do that anymore. It's really, it was just a fun story. I needed it at the time. It came at the right time. I had not heard of it before. There is a sequel that is coming out, or is already out. I'm on hold at the library. I don't know if I'm on hold because I'm waiting or if I'm on hold because they haven't bought it yet, but I had a really good time with this book. What is the most beautiful book you have bought this year? I don't buy special editions, not that I wouldn't, but I just never think to look for special editions, so I have no idea. I just don't buy many of like the super pretty ones. I would say the prettiest book from this year is probably The Dark Mirror by Samantha Shannon. I really like these covers, actually. They make me very happy. And like the end papers are like, it's just a pretty book. So I'd say this is definitely the one that is the most pretty. I do have, I did buy, can you see it right there? I do have Bury the Bones in the Midnight Soil, which I can't talk about because I read it in after the 6-month period, but let me tell you, that book is spectacular. And I've seen some of the special editions of that one, and it's so pretty. But I'm very content with the copy that I have. So I would think actually have purchased, it's Samantha Shannon's, but kind of wish I owned Bury Your Bones in the Midnight Soil. What are some books you need to read by the end of the year? This is, I don't have anything I need to read. I need to decide what I'm going to do about the Booker Prize this year, whether or not I'm going to try to read the books. I'm probably going to wait and see what the books are and go from there. So they would be the only ones that would maybe get on my TBR as like a mandatory read, and let's be honest, mandatory is very loose. I would like to continue working on my summer bingo card from the Seattle Public Library. So those books, but even it's not like there's a specific book I have to read to fulfill the prompts. Those are kind of my only goals. I'm very much a mood reader and will probably continue to be so. So nothing super important. Definitely some books I would like to get to, but nothing I have to read by the end of the year. What is the book you are most proud to have read this year? And this could be like a TBR veteran or longest book on your TBR, what it is. And for me, I'm actually super proud. I have been able to tackle my physical TBR, and that makes me super happy. And the two that I am so thrilled to have finally gotten to because they were such big wins, Wild by Cheryl Strayed and Prodigal Summer by Barbara Kingsolver. Both of these have been on my TBR for so long. I finally got to them. I absolutely love them. This is a memoir about a woman whose life is kind of falling apart and decides to hike the Pacific Crest Trail, which is not an easy feat. And what she learns along the way, you get some flashbacks as to how she has ended up where she is. Just a very well written book. And then Prodigal Summer follows a small town where a summer is, climate change is kind of taking part, and it's one of those, will this community survive? Because the weather is really impacting their ability to make money and to keep families and houses and everything going. And Barbara Kingsolver is such a spectacular writer. I was blown away with how much I really, really love this book, and obviously she continues to be an author that I will keep working my way through her backlist. And then, final question, and the one that I just answered in this one, are ones that I've kind of added on my own, is what have you learned this year through your reading? I have learned this year, the biggest one, is that I still really enjoy historical fiction. It's something that I got away from. Like I said, it was like a love or forget it type relationship. I kind of forgot about historical fiction. I don't really think historical fiction on BookTube is necessarily in vogue. You know what I mean? It's not the thing that is generally on people's top 40, like the top 40 list or the bestsellers. It's certainly not, the big releases are not typically historical fiction, but I really enjoy historical fiction. I read Maggie Stiefvater's book, The Listeners, historical fiction, The Pretenders by Joe Harkins, historical fiction, Nathan Harris's book. I've just read a few and I've rediscovered my love of historical fiction, and I am going to stop being so quiet about it because I think it deserves some love. But there we go. That is my mid-year book freakout tag. I am just looking forward to the next 6 months, and I thank you so much for being here. If you're still here, answer one of the questions below. Do a number generator, 1 to whatever it is. Answer one of the questions. Let me know how your reading has been going this year. And I will see you hopefully soon in the next video. Bye.